Welcome to Wednesday. IB Nation Sports Talk is up and rolling, along with Vince D'Addario. I'm Sean Stiers. I saw some impatient people in the chat just waiting for the show to start.
Just can't make everybody happy.
I know.
It's okay, though. We're here. Just, it's good things come to those who wait.
It's hit 4 after. I mean, come on. I had to get my daughter loaded up. My wife is coming in hot. She's got to take my daughter someplace tonight.
Gotcha.
So I was getting her loaded up right before we
that makes sense.
Both jumped in here.
But I mean, let's be honest. I was last, so it's okay.
I think we both got in. I think I might have beat you by 45 seconds or something.
Okay, so I don't feel quite so bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of activity in that chat. A lot of questions coming in already. So we might as well just jump into it. What do you think?
Yeah, we might as well. I mean, we are sitting right here, middle of the week, basically. Getting ready for this game. The problem is we got to wait till Monday. It's like when your favorite NFL team is playing on Monday Night Football. You got to get through everything else just to get to Monday. So we got to wait longer, which I'm not sure how I feel about. It's good for the team. It's not good for Vince. So again, it's all about me.
All the impatience, but it gives us more time. It gives us all more time.
And let's be honest, it allows us to go. Because of your responsibilities with the women's basketball team.
Correct.
It's a good thing that it's on Monday. Otherwise, we would not be going. So I'm ecstatic that it's
actually
on Monday.
glad it worked out. Because otherwise, like if it was on a Saturday and I had to do a game on a Sunday,
that would have been rough.
That would be pushing it.
Yes. And also that it's a home game is actually very helpful. Otherwise, that would have made things a little bit more difficult as well. So,
but. By the way, we're renting a vehicle. We're renting an SUV to drive down in, and I rented it from one of the dealerships or one of the rental places out at the airport.
Oh, interesting.
And I didn't think about it until afterwards, but the actual, like I think pick up your keys and stuff like that is actually in the terminal. I drive by there all the time. I think the pickup, like where you actually pick the car up, that's not like at the terminal, right? It's like, isn't it kind of like off-site? Are you familiar?
I have never rented a vehicle from the South Bend Airport.
I haven't either.
So honestly, I don't know where they keep all the rental vehicles. I know where the kiosks, like the little storefronts or whatever. I know where those are at in the airport. All the way to the left, when you walk in.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure where they keep all the cars. That's a really great question. I have no idea.
I'm just trying to figure out the logistics of picking it up. Like, do I drive myself? Where can I leave my car? Because I've done that before where we've rented a car to go out of town.
Sure.
We've left it, just in the parking lot. But that was not at the airport one. It was at the other one. So...
Right.
I didn't think about it until after I went through the whole thing online, so
there's some pretty cheap parking there, where you like shove the dollar bills into like the little slot.
But obviously I'd rather avoid
absolutely
paying to park if
completely
at all
agree with that.
Possible. So
completely agree with that.
Yeah. Okay. I had one ready to go. Here we go. Salty.
Okay.
Do you have a sense of how many Irish fans will attend the national championship game and what's happening with the IB in-game live show?
No sense of how many Notre Dame fans are going to be at the national championship game until I get down there.
Yeah.
Because, I got a real good sense when I was at the Sugar Bowl that it was like a 4-to-1 ratio or more or worse leading up to it. But then it was like 2-to-1 probably in the stadium. So... in favor of Georgia. And I don't know exactly what it ended up being in Miami because I wasn't down there. You don't really know until you get down there, to be honest with you, and kind of get that flavor of what it's like. The problem, I wouldn't say the problem, but like we talked about this before, Sean, Notre Dame doesn't have like a color. And so when you're going up against a team who has a dominant color, like a Georgia, like an Ohio State, it's going to be very obvious
who the
Ohio State fans are.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that is going to make a difference. Sometimes those Notre Dame fans are a little incognito prior to game time. So
navy blue tends to bleed in, right? It's like you're wearing camouflage, basically. If you're not wearing green, you don't stand out.
Right.
So I'm betting we'll see a lot from both fan bases.
Me too.
Now, Ohio State is a huge school. Like the enrollment is pushing 50,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's like the state school of Ohio. Mm-hmm. Ohio's not that far from Atlanta, so there's probably a pretty good chance. Whereas obviously Notre Dame's fan base is more national. But I think we'll see a good Irish turnout, but I have no real clue.
Well, and I know that Notre Dame's fan base is national and all of that, but there is, I think we've talked about this when they first kind of announced how the 12-team playoff was going to go. There's going to be some fan fatigue,
if you traveled to 2 games already, man. Or even
which
3.
game you go to, do you pick one? Do you hope they get to a certain one so that you can go to that one? Like,
and let's be honest, the tickets for this thing are not cheap.
Cheapest one's like $1,200 right now. So now it's coming down a little bit, hoping that it comes down a lot more, between now and Monday. But
I'm sorry, Vince.
Expensive.
It's not going to drop to $100.
I wanted to drop to free. So I got some feelers out there, Sean. I got some feelers out there, some additional feelers that I haven't talked to you about yet. So I'm hoping that one of those comes into play.
That's right. I keep forgetting that you have like a connection that you're hoping comes through. But 2 different connections.
I have one additional one that I have not informed you of at this point. Now,
very interesting.
Both of them are extreme long shots.
Still a long shot. Yeah.
Yes. So I want to be very clear on that. I am not that much in the know. So extreme long shots. But you know what? You and I are going to be in the game.
Yes.
We
don't have to worry about it.
It's the offspring that we got to worry about. So
right.
Yeah.
If Notre Dame wins the game, what percentage of current coaches do you think will be back next year?
I would say, because I always feel like there's one that surprises me. That a coach will take or something like that. It kind of out of nowhere kind of a deal, like a Troy head coaching position. That kind of like that one kind of caught me by surprise.
True.
To be perfectly honest with you, so I would say, what is there? How many coaches are there? 12 or something like that. I don't even know. Let's say, just for the sake of easier math, that there's 10 coaches. I would say then 90%. So whatever percentage that one coach leaves, that's where I'm going to sit.
Yeah, maybe you lose a couple. Like it feels like this staff is a lot more intact.
I completely agree.
Than the last couple of years. Like when you kind of go through it. Dylan McCullough has already interviewed, and like the problem with guys potentially taking other college jobs is most of them are filled up right now. Now, like if Dylan McCullough had a chance to go someplace and be an offensive coordinator as opposed to a running backs coach, would he take that
sure.
as an example? Would there potentially be some opportunities out there for something like that? I think 90% is a pretty safe bet. I'd say 90% or better will be back next year. But
I tend to
success
agree.
Does breed, as Marcus Freeman has said quite a bit, success breeds interest in your program. But I would think that would be where they are right now, because you've gone so late. I mean, January 20th, that is really late because everyone's already starting to focus on, they're like most of these staffs are most of them, emphasis on most, are already together and they're already focusing on their recruiting for next year and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, completely agree. I feel like this staff is a good cohesive staff, but as a head coach, you want success for your guys, and if they have aspirations of being a coordinator or being a head coach, then you want that for them. You know what I mean? As much as it stinks to replace them, you want success for them. So I you're not going to be able to keep them together the entire time Marcus Freeman is here. That's just not realistic. And so, somebody's going to leave at some point, but I just don't think the turnover is going to be massive.
This is an interesting one from Bubs. Would you rather start an injury-limited Rocco at guard and Jagasaw at tackle, or a fully healthy Tosh at tackle and Jagasaw at guard?
Well, that's the question of the day, or question of the week. And I think that's the question that this Notre Dame coaching staff is wrestling with right now. Because I think those are the two options on the table. In my opinion, I think those are the two options.
Well, we talked about it in rapid fire yesterday. The fact that when they put out the depth chart yesterday,
that was telling.
Tackle position is an or Tosh Baker or Charles Jagasaw, which tells me that Jagasaw is very much in play at left tackle. Like he's battling his way into that conversation. And like that's going to be the decision. Where would you rather have him? Where does he help you more? I think that like if Rocco is 90%, then Jagasaw is starting at left tackle.
I
think that they're better.
That's the best offense. That's the best offensive lineup that you can come up with, based on everybody that's still healthy, and I use that air quotes because of Rocco. I would even say an 80% Rocco. That's still the way to go. To be perfectly honest with you,
you say 80%. Even.
Yeah, that's my basement, but 80% or up. That's my lineup, Jagasaw, because I'm more worried about the edge pressure from Ohio State than I am about the interior pressure. And I just, Tosh Baker he's a friggin' soldier. He's a Notre Dame guy, all of those things. And he's got the height, the weight, the length. He's got all of those things. I just think his big Achilles heel is a speed rusher.
His feet just don't move as well as Charles Jagasaw's feet move. Correct. And like, even if Jagasaw isn't, full strength coming back from the pectoral, just the fact that he can move his feet better and, have a chance to get out there and be in front of a rusher. I think that's important. Now, one thing, playing him out there because he hasn't played out there all year, like when you start getting into loops and stunts and, some of those things that Ohio State is probably likely to bring at Riley Leonard, like how does he pick those things up? Because he hasn't had that opportunity, to work in unison and do some of those things that are more important, obviously, out there on the edge on that side.
Completely agree. And there's going to be some second start mistakes that are made. There's no doubt about it. But man, am I kind of excited about the potential of a Charles Jagasaw, Billy Schrouth left side of the line.
I mean, I'm much more excited about it after seeing the way that Jagasaw played at right guard last week. Now, I mean, like the one side of it is he is fully fresh because he doesn't have, a million snaps on his body and all the pounding on his body like everybody else had. But again, like that's part of kind of what makes it that much more enticing, to have him out there at left tackle. So
he's built like a left tackle. I mean, let's be honest, right? I mean, that's where his ideal build is, his ideal position because of his build. It's just like you said, his feet are kind of cement. He can do it, but he's not going to have success every time. And then again, neither is Jagasaw. So look, you're taking a chance either way. I just think you're taking less of a chance if Jagasaw is out there. That's where I'm at.
Scott L. Esquire, can we get a message to Denbrock and his staff to do a few more bootlegs Monday? We have one of the best make-you-miss quarterbacks I've ever seen at Notre Dame, and no bootlegs, even against Carter. I'm happy but puzzled. It's funny because like Jesse was doing his whiteboard breakdown and talking about some different things, and we were obviously talking about Riley Leonard in this offense going up against Ohio State's defense. And I don't think I got a chance to mention it, but this has popped in and out of my head all season long. The fact that you've got such a great running game and you've got such a great threat in Jeremiah Love and such a great running quarterback in Riley Leonard. I am a little bit baffled by the fact that we haven't seen just more naked bootleg out of Riley Mills. Fake it to Jeremiah Love and just naked bootleg, and it feels, like just think about some of the touchdowns inside the red zone that Leonard has scored this year simply because he did just that, faked it to Jeremiah Love and kept it himself. What do you think?
Just depends on how the defense is playing. You know what I
mean?
mean?
I'm not saying you're building offense around it, but I'm surprised that we haven't seen more of it.
Yeah, like I said, if they're keeping a spy or if they're doing, depends on what the defense wants to do. If they're good at keeping backside contained, then that's probably not going to work. Yeah, I just, I would like to see him get out in space a little bit more with some options. And I haven't really seen a whole lot of that, but I also trust Mike Denbrock, so I guess we'll see how it goes. Yeah. But yeah, I'm with you.
Mike says, with the season so long now for teams that will be regulars in the playoffs, do they need to change how they do the offseason and spring ball with conditioning? I will say this is something like do they have to tweak their schedule now because they've gone because class started this week.
Mm-hmm.
And when class starts, that's typically when winter conditioning starts, so they've been playing football, right up through that. So I would imagine they'll give them a couple of weeks off, don't you? To kind of let their bodies rest.
Yeah,
kind of just from a pure conditioning standpoint, push that back. I don't know how much they would tweak the rest of their spring. What do you think?
I think that, look, the season's 2 weeks longer, basically, as opposed to, or almost 2.5 weeks longer than it has if you were playing in the national championship game. Well, no, if you're playing in the national championship game, it was usually like the 8th or the 9th of January, right? So it's about 10 days longer, 10 to 11 days longer. We'll say 2 weeks than it ever has been in the past. So I think you just adjust your calendar those 2 weeks, and I think you're fine.
Well, but the other part of that is in the past, even though now technically on the calendar it might only be going 2 extra weeks, but you're also playing 4 extra games.
Sure, I get that.
You know what I mean? Whereas it was used to be just one bowl game. You'd get a little bit of time off, or you'd practice, you get a little time to go home for Christmas, and then you come back and you get your last week of bowl practice in. You go to your bowl game late December, early January, and then that's it. But now, even though calendar-wise it only looks like 2 weeks, you put a full month, plus basically when you factor in the practices that came before it. There was I was talking about this when we were on a women's basketball trip the other day with one of the student managers. Again, the spring semester has now started. It started on Monday, this 2 days ago at Notre Dame. When they were getting ready to play Indiana, finals were just ending, so it's been going for a while at this point. It's really kind of amazing to think of how long this thing's been going.
They're playing 2 extra games, right? I mean, that's what it comes down to. Well, it's 2 if you're playing the national championship game. It was a Final Four before.
Oh, you're saying if you had made it to the playoffs, basically.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So you're playing.
I was saying 3 as in,
granted. Yeah,
bowl,
I got you.
Versus a bowl game.
I figure since Notre Dame's playing in the national championship, I'll compare to if they would have played in the national championship before. Sure. Look, you're going to have to make some concessions, right? You're not going to just take this walking wounded football team and be like, all right, guys, we just won the national championship on Monday, Wednesday. Let's go. We got 6 a.m. practice. Let's get after it. You know what I mean? Not going to do that, obviously. They need to. There needs to be some rest. There needs to be some healing. There needs to be, all of those things. And that will happen. That will occur. I don't know how much time they're going to take off. There is a press conference scheduled for the winners on Tuesday. It's a great question to ask Marcus Freeman on that Tuesday. Hey, when are you guys going to start working for next year?
Are we staying in town for that, Vince? I don't know. I haven't even looked at the schedule.
I don't remember what time it was, but I doubt it. I think, look, one thing I know about Marcus Freeman and staff is that they have a plan. Whatever that plan is, they've got one because they usually have a plan for this contingency or this contingency or this contingency. I feel good about the plan that they have, and whatever that plan is, they're going to let this team heal. They're going to let this team rest up.
I mean, you have to,
It's not like they're out of shape right now.
Yeah.
You don't have to jump into conditioning like they're out of shape because they're in season.
Right.
So you can give them a month and I think they'll be fine. You know what I mean? Because then you get like, let's pretend you give them a month. Okay. You're at the middle to end of February. That gives you a whole month of conditioning. Now you're into spring ball. And then we know spring ball goes for like a little over a month because of spring break being kind of in the middle there. I think the spring game's on April 26th or something like that. So they'll be fine. They'll be just fine. But the biggest thing is they need to heal up. You don't want to jump right into conditioning and all of that.
Oh, exactly. Exactly. They do need to. They've got to give them some time off after this. I mean, it's great to have a deep run, obviously, but it is, like I said, it's something that I've been thinking about, but it's like you don't really, bring it up in any of the press conferences that we've had because everything is still about this game. It's like that's putting the cart way ahead of the horse, to be thinking about those kind of things. But like you said, Tuesday press conference, great time to bring it up after winning a national championship. What's your spring look like now?
Yeah, well, it's again just yet another way that this staff has to adjust, right? They've never had to adjust for playing as many games as they've played this year. They've never had to adjust to this kind of a calendar. So yeah, I mean, how flexible can you be? That's the question.
Price 29 says if Notre Dame were to lose in the championship, do you think any players that can leave would stay to finish the job?
Oh, that's a great question. How many legitimate players who are playing this year, right, are going to leave with...
There really aren't that
many. That's what I'm saying. Like, what's that list look like that are leaving with eligibility still on the table?
Mitchell Evans.
Okay. Ben Morrison.
He's injured. So I
still don't know what he's going to do. I assume he's still going to leave. But you don't know.
Right.
I don't know how many guys, you might see some transfers, obviously, that because they're not going to play as much and they want to get playing time. That's different.
But again, that doesn't happen until the end of spring now when the next portal opens. So, because you've already played, like the portal is already closed for the winter.
I thought there was a rule, like if you're still in the playoff, like you can still jump in the portal. Is that not a thing? I don't remember.
Maybe I don't know.
So many,
honestly, there's so many little things like that. I have paid zero attention to that.
We'll find out real quick once the game is over and we see announcements from guys about.
I mean, maybe that happens, but
yeah,
like I said, spring semesters have started now.
Right
at this point. So, like, if you're going somewhere, it needs to happen pretty quickly, assuming that the place you're going cares about, players actually going to class and that kind of thing. So,
right. Yeah.
But yeah.
It's a great question. I don't know. I'd have to see a list of guys that have eligibility on the table and are currently considering leaving, but if they lose, would then come back. I think
there are fewer,
minuscule.
You had Riley Mills and Howard Cross last year as examples. Jack Kaiser even as another example.
Right.
But all of those guys have completely exhausted their eligibility at this point. Jordan Botello is coming back.
Yep.
He's already said that. So there just aren't that many on this roster who fall into that category.
Because normally we're talking
Mitchell Evans would be the most prominent. And like you said, Ben Morrison, but that's just so different because he's been out for so long with an injury at this point.
Yeah, no, normally we're talking about, guys that, oh man, I hope so-and-so sticks around. Mitchell Evans, it says he's a senior in eligibility. I wonder if he has another year. Do you know that for a fact?
Well, you have to look at the website and see how many years he's actually played. And,
let's see, freshman played in all 13 games. Sophomore year played in 13 games. Junior year played in 7. And then this year. So yeah, he's out.
So he's done. Okay. He's done. I was thinking because of the injuries,
sure,
that he had one more, but so he doesn't fall into that category.
Yeah, so he's done. I just don't know how many other guys would fall on this list. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but again,
I was actually just looking through the roster today,
Okay.
For something we're going to talk about in rapid fire. And they're not a ton of senior / grad guys around, even around, let alone guys who have more years of eligibility beyond this.
Yeah. Yeah.
JT and Colsey.
Tyler Buckner comes back.
I mean,
okay.
Yeah.
Here's the list, right? Buckner has a year of eligibility left. Rocco Spindler has a year of eligibility left. Other than that, they're all like juniors, right? Who are at junior year eligibility. Raridan, Morrison. That's a bunch of walk-ons. Junior Tui Alamaka. I can't see him leaving. And everybody else either has freshmen.
The only reason Tui Alamaka would go is if he transfers someplace, I think.
Right. And I realize a lot of guys are coming back. Okay, seniors with junior eligibility. Colsey.
That's like
Tucker.
Jaden Thomas falls into that.
Yeah. Colsey, Tucker, Onye, Coogan, Jaden Thomas, Gabriel Rubio. That's the list. So
a lot of dudes coming back next year.
Yeah, it's gonna be a full roster, man.
Yeah, a lot of dudes from a team that's playing in the national championship game. A lot different than last year's national champion with everybody that they've lost.
No doubt.
Speaking of off seasons, Joe says not complaining, but how is this long playoff run affecting recruiting efforts?
Not at all. I mean, they're getting every transfer that they wanted. They're getting grad transfers. They're getting underclassmen transfers. So, I mean, that's not affecting anything. And the, recruiting for the 25 class is over. So you're talking for the 26 class, I guess. I don't think it's affecting anything.
Well, there is some recruiting staff, like recruiting specific staff that's hitting the road this weekend to go out and see some guys.
But I don't think.
So, like, even though Marcus Freeman and the coaches aren't doing it, like specific.
Oh, they can do that now?
Mm-hmm.
They can go on the road? I see. That's another rule change that I didn't realize was the thing. Okay. Interesting.
Yep. And that's, everything has just changed so much.
I know. I can't keep track.
Keeping track of everything.
I honestly cannot keep track of all the rule changes and, the nuances. And now anybody is allowed to coach and, all of these different things. It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. But no, to Joe's point, I don't think anything changes or is.
And if anything, hurting. I think just the fact that Notre Dame's playing in the national championship game is just
maybe that's what he was referring to. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just gonna increase interest.
People are gonna want to go to the school that's in the national championship or winning the national championship. Either one. I don't see how this could possibly hurt recruiting.
Look at all the transfers that they've got. And I saw some people, kind of complaining about some of the quality or whatever, but it's like, you got a couple defensive linemen. Like we've seen the last few years, how hard it is to get quality defensive linemen as transfers. And they've got a couple of them. And look at where they are right now. They're running on fumes right now at the interior defensive line with, how things have shaken out with the really unfortunate loss of Riley Mills. So you can get those kind of guys. That's a huge need. And they got a couple of them already in school right now. Did you see that whole thing, by the way, that apparently there were some these early enrollees that I get, the school, I guess there's like a student directory.
Okay.
And so last week, the semester hadn't even started, but these incoming transfers were already in the student directory.
Oh, so really?
Anyone who had access to that, you could see they were already lined up and ready to go, even though they hadn't announced officially. That's
hilarious. I did not know that.
So I saw this, and then literally the next day, it's that's when we got all these announcements.
Sure, because now it's out there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, look, Notre Dame this is what people need to understand about transfers at Notre Dame. They're recruiting guys to fill very specific roles and very specific needs. And so if you don't think it's like a big time guy or whatever, then that's not what they were looking for. They were looking for a guy to compete, or they were looking for a rotation guy, or they were looking to fill a depth piece. They got what they wanted. You know what I mean? I think Notre Dame's very happy with their transfer class. I really do.
So I'm going to have to take
Brian, pull that one up.
Exception with Brian's comments. Most transfers we've had have been a bust. Like
talking about
Jordan Clark, Riley Leonard, obviously.
Mitch Jeter.
The kicker, Blake Groupie.
Bo Collins has not been a bust, even though maybe he is not as successful.
Bo Collins has been up and down, but not a bust. Jordan Clark. Did I say Jordan Clark already?
That whole big scoring, output there for the Georgia. You don't win the Georgia game without transfers, folks.
Yeah. Jaden Harrison. Yeah.
Jaden Harrison returned the kick. Bo Collins is the one that caught the touchdown.
No one was expecting, they didn't bring Jaden Harrison in with the priority being what he could do as a wide receiver. Like whatever he could do as a wide receiver was a bonus. And essentially, would you have liked to have seen a couple longer returns? Sure. But, look at just the way kickoffs go and all that, so many touchbacks and stuff these days. I mean, he freaking returned a momentum shifting kickoff to open the second half for a touchdown against Georgia, and you end up winning that game. So, you have got your return on investment with Jaden Harrison.
Big time.
With that one kickoff return alone.
I mean, like I said, Jordan, you got Harrison, Jeter.
There you go.
Collins,
Javonte Jean-Baptiste last year, and obviously
Riley
Sam
Leonard.
Hartman last year.
You don't have those four guys. You don't score those 17 points or whatever right in the middle of the game in the Georgia game. So
Rod Hurd, Thomas, the guy from Oklahoma State. Am I missing? There's another nickel. It feels like that I'm Thomas Harper. Yeah.
Every nickel they brought in the last 3 years has been critical to what they're doing on defense. So he says every one of those that you listed are not Rockstar players. Okay. But you know what? That's okay. That's not what they're recruiting them to be.
Right.
Your Rockstar players are homegrown, and that's okay too.
They've all been significant contributors to a team that's playing in the national championship game. Right. They don't have to be Rockstar players. They're significant contributors. And again, RJ Oben, was the bulk of his season relatively disappointing? Yeah. But again, strip sack in the college football playoff quarterfinal that leads to a touchdown on the next play. As we said afterwards, you got your money's worth in RJ Oben right there with that one play alone. He was a significant contributor to a college football playoff run.
He just said Mitch Jeter is ranked last in kicking. You know what?
Okay,
you're right. He was also injured.
Do you really need me to tell you stats are for losers right now? Because stats are for losers. Have you watched him again, he was injured for 2 months of the season.
Right.
So, he was inconsistent during that stretch when he was able to get on the field. Yeah, he missed some field goals in that time. Was it a huge concern at the time? Of course it was, because you're getting ready for the playoffs. And it's and we talked about this going into the Indiana game. There was a high concern level. But Mitch Jeter, again,
he's missed one kick and it got blocked.
He just sent you to the national championship game with less than 10 seconds, not even a week ago. Did you forget about that?
Come on, man. That's just not a great take.
Come on,
I'm
bro.
Sorry. It's just not. I appreciate you, man. Thanks for participating in the show. But that's just not a great take.
Yeah.
That's all I got. So
Brian is obviously only happy when it rains. So
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Super chat from Tyler. Thank you very much, Tyler. What do you think it would mean if Notre Dame wins the first ever 12-team playoff?
I mean, it would be game changing for Notre Dame. I mean, they haven't won a championship since I was 7 years old, 1988, right? So I mean, they've been searching and hunting for that championship for over 30 years. So this would be a massive game changer. And not only for Notre Dame, but, and not that I really care what national people think, but right now, for the last 30 years, Notre Dame can't win a big game. I mean, that's what Notre Dame is. They're the team that's always going to be around, but they can't win the big game. They win the national championship. That shuts a lot of that up. Not all of it, because it's still Notre Dame, but it shuts a lot of that up, and it proves that they can do that. So
it moves you to a completely different echelon. You win a national championship, whether it's the first 12-team format or a 4-team or BC, whenever it happens to be. You win a national championship, you're on a different echelon. Because, I mean, just look at the last 25 years. There's a small percentage of schools who have actually won these things.
Right.
Like Michigan, Clemson, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, USC. Like, who else am I missing? Texas won one. It's like it's a very small percentage when you stop and look back. LSU, obviously, with 3 of them. So like, did I say Clemson? I think I said Clemson. I mean, obviously they have 2. Georgia has 2. Alabama's got all theirs. LSU has multiple titles. Florida has multiple titles. Ohio State has their championship. And it's like, outside of them, like, you can count, you can literally, with your 2 hands, you can count all the championships in the last 25 years, and not much more, on the second hand. So it moves Notre Dame to a completely different echelon. And again, when you talk about recruiting and all that kind of impact, it's just gonna continue to shift things in Notre Dame's favor as they go forward. Man, Scumlord. I didn't even see what he said.
Oh, it wasn't great.
His handle is Scumlord. So was he an Ohio State troll, or like
hard to say, but I'm gonna go with yes. It's a timeout, not a banning, but it's like, you need to check yourself, man. That's where I'm at.
Okay. Salty says, will Mr. Day's conduct after the last Ohio State Irish game fire up the Irish gameplay intensity? And I'm going to follow that with this. He says, should Lou Holtz address the team pregame, as he will be in Atlanta for the game? Did you see his tweet today? Lou Holtz said he's going to make, he wasn't, I guess, was he in a car wreck or something?
Like, I believe so. Yeah, that's what I heard. I didn't realize that was a recent situation, but yeah, apparently he was.
Yeah.
Somebody in the chat said what he said. Apparently it was a tweet about Ryan Day and going to the game and all this other stuff.
He retweeted. They were talking about him on McAfee today, and whether or not he was going to be at the game, and he retweeted this video from the McAfee show, and he said something to the effect of, if Notre Dame loses this game, it will be because we feel sorry for Ryan Day and want him to keep his job, or something to that effect. And he said he wasn't originally going to be going, but he's gonna find his way there. Now, I say, Lou Holtz in the locker room.
Yep.
You save Ryan Day's butt for me. I mean, that's like,
wheel him in, baby.
That's right.
Just wheel him in, and that's what I want. That's the footage that I want on Wake Up the Echoes. Okay, I need him to say that, and I hope he's listening. He's not, but I hope he's listening, and I hope that's all you got to say. Just roll him in, and just, hey, wish you guys good luck, and you guys going to go out there and you're going to do your thing, but save Ryan Day's ass for me. I will be curious, because Marcus Freeman has, as we've talked about, he's done some different things. Coaches always look for buttons to push and stuff like that. Because Salty said, will the comments from last year fire up the team? Like, would Marcus Freeman go to that well and, like, pull out some of the video from after the game when Ryan Day was barking on the field and all that kind of stuff? Now, Marcus Freeman, as he, was talking about Jeremiah Love's comments, said, hey, we don't need last year to get us fired up. This is the national championship game. But doesn't mean he's not going to have. I mean, look, I didn't think that he would use the press conference, and apparently he did. So, you know what? At this point, man, don't leave any stone unturned. I whatever need you do to fire up the crew, and if there's one person I trust to fire up Notre Dame and to figure out what that is, it's Marcus Freeman. If you're going to use it, man, go ahead and use it. Wheel in the coach. He's the last one that won a national title for you, so he knows what it takes to get it done.
I am Tenzin, son of Ang, more likely against Ohio State, 200 rushing yards or 300 passing yards.
Rushing. And it didn't take me that long to decide that one. So I'm going rushing on this one.
Yeah, I think Notre Dame is going to have some success running the ball. I don't know that they're going to get to 200. There's no way they're getting to 300 against Ohio
and passing,
State.
You mean?
Yeah.
I agree.
And that's why 200 is the better chance. I think last year, they ran for over 160 some yards against Ohio State. So, like, it's not far off from 200. And if you're having the kind of success that you think you're going to be able to have, I mean, as Marcus Freeman says, you've got to be able to run the ball. It starts with that.
100%.
And if they can find that formula to get ahead, they're just going to keep pounding the rock.
Yep.
Is what they're going to do. And again, like the thought of the potential of what that offensive line could look like this could be in the national championship game. We might see the fully realized Notre Dame offensive line, with the exception of, and this is, no offense to Coogan or anything like that, but Ashton Craig was obviously the starting center at the start of the year. Coogan is,
it's true,
done a good job himself, but other than that, everywhere else, but regardless of who's at center, this could still end up being the best offensive line we see from Notre Dame this season. So
I also hope the sidelines are just littered with Notre Dame alumni too. Just for when Notre Dame wins the game, it's almost just an additional slap in the face of the last head coach, because that was just not the case when he was here. So that's one thing I would like to see that has nothing to do with the actual gameplay itself, but I want to see all just buckets of alumni on the sidelines for this game and celebrating with the team when they win.
Remington Jeans, thank you for the super chat. Do you think the short turnaround Notre Dame had from Georgia to Penn State played a factor in the misfits the defense had in the Penn State game?
I think I know what you're going to say. I think that's an excuse. I don't think it had anything to do with them not being able to tackle. Now, there's empirical evidence to say that they really hadn't had a poor tackling half like that all season. And then they decided to do that against Penn State. But they had the same amount of time between games that they always have between games. So I don't like that as an excuse. So I am going to say that no, it did not play a factor.
I think there was some fatigue factor. I do think, after playing a physical game against Georgia, but that's as far as I will go.
Oh, okay.
To this specific question, I think that Andy Kotelnicki and the different things that he did with the running game, showing different looks, kind of going off script compared to what Penn State had done prior to that. I think that had more to do with the issues that Notre Dame had defensively in the first half than fatigue. Was there still some fatigue factor? Yes. But I think those specific things had more to do with the looks that they were getting from Penn State that Penn State hadn't done before.
I would completely agree with everything that you just said.
All right.
Yep.
Excellent.
That's fantastic. I didn't realize that was going to be the case.
I know. You thought you were reading my mind.
I was ready to start a rumble.
I mean, again, I do think that you play two games like that back-to-back. Notre Dame really needed the extra days.
Sure.
I just saw something with Marcus Freeman he was on College Football Live on ESPN this afternoon, and it wasn't all him doing the talking. I think Molly McGrath, the sideline reporter, had talked to him, and she was saying, that he said Jeremiah Love feels much better right now with that knee than he felt on the day of the game last week, going into the Penn State game. So if that's the case, that's really good news for Notre Dame.
Yeah, it is. That's great news.
Scott L. Esquire, why hasn't Price flourished more in the playoffs with Love getting less reps?
Great question. I think that's a question for him. Look, he's getting hit in the backfield an awful lot too. And you can call that dumb luck. You can call it whatever you want. The problem is he's getting hit in the backfield and going down in the backfield. So, needs to do a better job of that, frankly. Now, some of it's not his fault. When you get hit 4 yards deep in the backfield because of a missed block, there's not a whole lot you can do about that, right? Not every run is going to look like Jeremiah Love's 2-yard touchdown run. That's not reality. And so I think some of it's been dumb luck. Some of it has been, some things that he's not doing great. But maybe he's just holding on till this game. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I've kind of wondered this myself, and you're right about when you get hit in the backfield, and credit Penn State especially. There was a very active defensive front, and they did a good job against Notre Dame's running game. But I too have been kind of just waiting. It's okay, here comes the Jadarian Price run. Here it comes anytime, and it's just the big one hasn't come yet. And I think that he's got at least one or two of those in him for next Monday night still. So I wouldn't give it up just yet. I think that we're going to see some, like we said, with the running game. I think we're going to see some good stuff out of that running game. I think that it sets up where Notre Dame should have some pretty good success.
Yeah, you're going to see Aeneas Williams with some extra touches, I think, in this game, and I think that's an okay thing too. Obviously, he hasn't had as many carries as either one of the other two guys, and so he's a lot more fresh. And I think that's a matchup nightmare on the outside if you're going to line him up as a receiver as well. So, look, Notre Dame's going to find a way to get yards from their running backs. It just might be in an unconventional way at times, and that's okay too. I don't care how they get their yards, Sean Stiers.
No, I don't.
I just want them to get them.
It does not matter how they get there. Does not matter how the points are scored. It only matters that they are scored. That is it.
Yep. Agreed.
So Knuckle Up 1842 says, is Pendleton that bad that he's not listed on the 2 deep? I'm double checking the depth chart here because I thought I saw him.
I don't think he was.
He's listed at number 2 center.
Oh,
this week. Yeah.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
He is on the depth chart.
So he is on the 2 deep.
Look, it's not a matter of is Pendleton bad. It's a matter of that Charles Jagasaw is really freaking good. Like that, you know what I mean? Like it's more, it says more about that he's in 2 spots as the backup or starter than it does about anybody else that's on there. That's what it says to me. And so it's not a knock on Pendleton. It's just Charles Jagasaw's that good.
Yeah. Jagasaw was going to be the starting left tackle.
Right.
That's what it comes down to. And the entire look at Jagasaw compared to Anthony Knapp just physically, right? And again, not a shot on Anthony Knapp, but look at them physically. I was actually, they were ESPN, I think it was ESPNU was showing a replay of the Indiana game. And so you see Knapp out there, when he was playing in that game, and you look at Jagasaw last week, there is just a huge physical difference in those body types, for starters. And, again, I know the question wasn't about Knapp, it was about Pendleton, but that's what Jagasaw has done. He has come in, and because he is that good, he has inserted himself into this to the point where he's going to be a factor in the national championship game after missing, basically, the entire regular season plus another playoff game. He's going to be a factor now in the national championship game. That's what it is. See any others that you want to queue up off the top of your head?
You could throw this one up from Archer, our resident Ohio State fan.
All right.
Why not?
Archer, would you rather win in a blowout or a last-second play? Would you rather lose in a blowout or a last-second play?
Gosh. I guess, okay, so let's talk about this game specifically, Sean. If they win, I don't care. Right. Really. I know that's a fence-sitting answer. I don't care. If they lose, I would rather be at a close loss. Not that you can explain it away.
Yeah, if we're talking about this game specifically, it has to be at least a close game from Notre Dame's perspective. It cannot be a blowout. Now, if you're talking about me personally, I would almost rather just get blown off the field because emotionally you get over it a lot quicker.
You really do.
It's amazing how that works. We in games that we've coached in and played in, and you really get over the blowouts a lot quicker. But if it comes right down to the end, it's one play here, one pitch, one pass, whatever it happened, whatever sport it happens to be, one shot in a game of that magnitude. If it comes right down to the end and you end up losing, that stays with you for a long time. But if you just, if it's just not your day and your doors are blown off,
right,
you move past it very quickly, so, but again, if we're talking specific to Notre Dame, this has to be at the very least a close game, like a touchdown game one way or the other, competitive, throughout, like from Notre Dame's perspective. Good one from Irish Gordian Nut. Up to this point, what's the play of the year for Notre Dame?
That's a really great question. I saw this one earlier, and I was trying to go through the Rolodex of what that might be. First one that came to mind was 3rd and 7 against Georgia with the Riley Leonard flip over the top. That felt like kind of a microcosm of like Riley Leonard. You know what I mean? Where, most teams are going to drop their quarterback back and throw the ball in that moment. And Riley Leonard just is going to take it around the outside, outrun 2 Georgia defenders, and then leap over another one. You know what I mean? Like, that was just a microcosm of that. So that was the first one that came to mind. What comes to mind for you?
The Christian Gray interception last week was huge.
Oh, yeah.
Because, obviously it leads to the game-winning field goal. I'm trying to think of some other candidates. The Jeremiah Love run, the 2-yard touchdown run, taking defenders with him into the end zone. Like, in terms of, just overall, significance, they needed a touchdown, obviously, but in terms of, overall significance to the season, maybe that falls a little bit farther behind some of those plays. But I like yours. Like, someone just mentioned the back-to-back pick sixes against USC.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Not one individual play, so that's kind of cheating a little bit. I don't know. Like, are there any others that you can think of? The Jaden Harrison kickoff return.
That was massive, obviously. You could say, I'll hit. Look,
I'll 98-yard run. Yeah.
I'll speak for the specialist, the kick by Jeter in the last game to send him to the national championship. That was a pretty big moment too. There's a lot of them, but when you win 14 games, there's going to be a lot of big plays, and that's okay too. It's just going to make the season summary DVD or video or whatever that you buy. That much better.
Go back to Texas A&M. There was the run that Riley Leonard made in that game, the catch that Bo Collins made in that game,
massive
on the decisive drive at the end. When we were talking about transfers and that kind of stuff, and impact. Do they win at Texas A&M if they don't have Bo Collins making the play that he made, or the pass even? Where the one where they motioned Greathouse and he caught that pass, that short pass that converted a 3rd down over there in the flat on the left side. Do you remember which one I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
So, a lot of, again, like, it seems like a million years ago at this point, but I think Christian Gray with that interception, when you get the ball in Penn State territory and you kick the game-winning field goal, I think that's got to be probably at the top of my list for me.
Yeah, there's just so many good ones.
Ask me next week, and
I know, right?
Let's see what other options we have. Maybe we might have to rank our top 5 or so plays from the season. That's a good one. Go ahead and answer Andre's question. Is Double H Hannah Hidalgo playing Thursday? Neil Ivey said today, put this up on the Champions Lounge, that she anticipates being the key word, that Hannah Hidalgo is going to play. So everything's looking like Hannah's going to play Thursday against Georgia Tech. Great news. Kind of had a feeling that she would, but that's what Neil Ivey said today.
Love it.
I'm going to let you start with this one, and I'm going
to
be right back. I'm going to step out for just a second. Okay.
Right.
Have the last 3 defenses the Irish have faced prepared them for Ohio State, or is OSU's defense a quantum leap better?
Ohio State's defense is not a quantum leap better than Georgia and Ohio State. No way. But they're really good, right? I think there's an argument to be made that Ohio State and Notre Dame are the 2 best defenses in the country. And depending on the argument that you want to come up with, whether Ohio State's 1 or Notre Dame is 1. Look, it's a really good defense, but Notre Dame's played against really good defenses I feel like, the entire playoff. Like, IU's defense is really good too. Now, IU's defense was a step below because of the Jimmies and Joes, not the X's and O's. But Georgia and Penn State are right up there with Ohio State. I still think Ohio State is better overall, but I would say that it is not a quantum leap better than the other two. So to answer the question, are the three defenses that they faced prepared them for Ohio? Absolutely. Absolutely. Because look, Notre Dame's going to win some of those matchups, and Ohio State's going to win some of those matchups. I think, Mike Denbrock, the play calling of Mike Denbrock is going to be massive in this game. There's no more games. Like, everybody talks, oh, he's going to save this for this, and there's no more games to save anything, right? They're going to be pulling out all the stops in this game against Ohio State. I think that, Notre Dame's tackles are going to have a long day. They're going to win some, they're going to lose some. You just hope that the ones that they lose aren't in critical positions, in critical times of the game, right? Whether it's Tosh Baker, Charles Jagasaw, Emil Wagner, whatever the case. Look, Emil Wagner had his toughest matchup personally last week, right? Nobody on Ohio State's better than the Carter kid. So, it's going to be a step down for him. So I anticipate him playing better this week than he did last week. Not that he played poorly, but he's going up against a dude, right? And so I think that they absolutely prepared Notre Dame for this matchup, but Ohio State's going to bring it every single play. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Like in terms of what the defenses are, and how they compare, I will just say this, like, again, back-to-back games. No one has had to do what Notre Dame just did, just in terms of two games that were just knockdown, drag-out fights at the line of both lines of scrimmage, right, against Georgia and Penn State. No one else has had to do that so far. So for that aspect, that is going to help, obviously schematically and the kind of, players, and, there's going to be a lot of differences between them. But the fact that Notre Dame had to just get into big time rock fights 2 weeks in a row,
dog fights, man.
Yeah, against Georgia and Penn State, that will help prepare them for what they will see against Ohio State. Again, schematically and who the players are and how they go about things is going to be different. Yeah. But I do think that it helps them that they have seen that. And just reiterating what I've said, like the fact that they got extra time in between last week's Penn State game and this national championship game, I think that that's going to be a big benefit for them after having to play those kind of games 1 week apart.
Agreed. Completely agree. And while you were gone, I mean, look, and IU's defense was no slouch. They just didn't match up from a roster standpoint. You know what I mean? They were tough.
I mean, they were physical and tough in their own right, but they just weren't as big and gifted as Georgia and Penn State. Yeah,
correct.
Exactly. Good point. If Notre Dame were to lose the national champ, we've already done this one. The question about would players stay? I know.
Get rid of it.
I'm gonna save different one. Is the time right for Tommy Rees to be an NFL offensive coordinator? If so, it's his call after all. Is Cleveland the right team?
Last part, no. Like, you want to go someplace to die, I think Cleveland is the answer right now. But
I mean, they've been better. The problem with Cleveland is the whole Deshaun Watson thing.
Right.
That was a management issue.
That was the dumbest. Deshaun
Watson.
Terrible.
Yeah.
So what is your answer at quarterback right now? And look, let's be honest, right? You're as an offensive coordinator in the NFL, you're only going to be as good as the quarterback that you have. And I'm not sure what the answer is at quarterback in Cleveland right now. Right. So that's going to be the biggest issue for Tommy Rees. Look, I am not even close to as down on Tommy Rees as a lot of people are out there. Some people just absolutely hate him and they just associate him with BK and all of those different things. Okay. I think he always wanted to be in the NFL, I believe. And he always wanted to be an offensive coordinator in the NFL, maybe a head coach someday. I think Cleveland's a good stepping stone. I don't know that it's a great landing spot, but it's the job that was open also. Like, if you got a really good quarterback, there's probably not an open OC job.
There are 32 of those jobs in the world.
Right.
And Tommy Rees went from tight end coach to offensive coordinator in 1 year. And remember, he was internal as well. They fired their offensive coordinator, and he was just a position coach, and they promoted him. So they obviously see, Kevin Stefanski and that organization obviously sees a lot in him, So like,
when did they fire their OC? Was it like during season, or was it?
I think it was like right after the season.
Okay,
maybe.
I was wondering if he was kind of the interim without being the interim, and they saw what they liked, or something along those lines.
I think it happened right after the season. ended.
Gotcha.
So
gotcha.
I mean,
Pete, look, listen.
He wants to be an NFL head coach, and to get to be an NFL head coach, you've got to be a coordinator first. And now he's 32 years old, and he's got his first NFL coordinator job. So to me, like, things are working out. Like, the question is now, can you be the guy to finally get something out of Deshaun Watson? Because it's been since he was in Houston that anybody did. So,
everybody has their opinion about Tommy Rees, fair or foul, right? But NFL thinks he's got talent, clearly, or at least Stefanski thinks he has talent. Nick Saban thinks he has talent. Nick Saban hired him as his offensive coordinator for a reason, okay? And I think we all will at least give a nod to Nick Saban's like, okay, I think you hit more than you've missed with your hirings. And if you think that he's good enough, then he's good enough. So I feel like there's an awful lot of people out there that know football that keep giving him jobs and think that he's really good. So at some point, I feel like they've got to be right. You know what I mean? I don't
think all these football people are completely wrong.
Right. Exactly. And it's not like his dad was like,
because when you hire someone, your job is essentially riding on the people you hire. Ryan says Watson's done. He doesn't see him playing for the Browns. If that's the case, then that's the best case scenario for Stefanski and Tommy Rees. Like honestly, I think there's going to be a lot of people, a lot of other teams. Like, if I were the Pittsburgh Steelers, if I were the Cleveland Browns, like as two examples, I'm trying to think of some others off the top of my head. Like, I would be looking at Minnesota and I'm going, do I want to potentially trade for JJ McCarthy? Do I want to potentially, try to trade for Sam Darnold? Because there are more questions about Darnold after the way the Vikings season ended on Monday night in the playoffs. But like, both of those, like, I know that, none of us are overly high on JJ McCarthy, but that's a situation that presents it. Like, you could potentially go get one of the, and if you're Tommy Rees and you're Cleveland and you got this kind of wad of clay that you can mold in McCarthy, or even, bring in a proven guy like Darnold, I think they'd be in a lot better case, or a lot better situation than they were with Watson last year. I mean, Stefanski, until things really fell off the wheels, when they had to go to Jameis Winston this year, like, he had kind of shown that he could win some games with basically anybody but Deshaun Watson last year and this year when they started winning games with Joe Flacco. So, I don't know. I'm not sure where the Browns pick. I think they've got a relatively high pick, though. Is it 2?
I think it's 2.
So there you go. They might be drafting a quarterback.
Yeah, they
might not be one that you like, but
they're saying Milroe potentially to Cleveland.
I don't know about that after the way things went down there in Alabama with.
Well, he's got experience with Milroe.
He's got experience with him, but that could inform whether or not he thinks they should take him as well.
Yeah.
So forgot to unstar a lot of these. They keep showing up here as I'm looking for new questions to bring in.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with Tommy. It's fine. He's fine.
Salty wants to know, will we see the double pass play? If so, will the great one, 179.9 career QBR, throw it to Mr. Evans or Mr. Aeneas Williams?
I can't imagine. I can't imagine that people aren't looking for 26 and they've got their names on the back of the jerseys. Like it's going to be, blue fabric, gold writing there. Hey, Buckner's on the field. 26 is on the field. Like, I just don't see that. I think the element of surprise with Tyler Buckner is over. That's my personal. And if they do something with him and it's successful, then shame on Ohio State because they didn't prepare properly for Tyler Buckner.
Well, at this point, he's almost like the decoy. Like you put him on the field, but then you have somebody else do something.
That's fair. Yeah.
I wish I was a domer. This week, the NCAA may approve a rule to grant all athletes 5 years of eligibility. This would give Riley Leonard 1 more year, in or out, on Leonard and Love running it back in 2025. Well, first of all, Love is just a sophomore, so he's automatically back in 2025. But the question is, Riley Leonard.
I'm out. It's not the plan. And I don't know that they're going to deviate from the plan. So, you tip your cap to Riley Leonard, you thank him for everything that he's done, and you wish him all the best, and you help him prepare for the NFL draft or whatever. Like, why would Riley Leonard come back after winning a national championship? Like, I don't know. What do you have left to prove? It's all downhill from there.
Man, I mean, he's making it pretty tough to make this decision, though, because I think we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and now you're going into a national championship game, and he has been a huge part of getting to the national championship game. If Riley Leonard helps Notre Dame win a national championship, is granted a 5th year of eligibility, and wants to come back, and I get it, like, your quarterback I'm still completely out on bringing in anyone else, as a grad transfer or, not a grad transfer, a transfer portal quarterback. I'm out on bringing anyone else in. That's a tough call to make. You win a national championship with the quarterback who wants to come back for another year, and you tell him, we're good. We're going to go with the young and experienced guy.
I just think they're ready for the offense to take another step. And I don't know if they're going to be able to take that step with Riley Leonard at quarterback. And look, Malachi Fields doesn't come to Notre Dame if he's thinking that Riley Leonard is going to be the quarterback next year, because that's not going to help his draft stock any.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, you've got to get the receivers involved in the game. It's got to be
right.
Now, this one, the multi-dimension, the dual threat has, as we've talked about, has really helped this Notre Dame offense this season. But again, like, you win it, if you win a national championship, that's me fair. Is what makes it a tougher call.
Well, if they lose the national championship, I'm still making the same call. Me personally,
yeah,
they're not going to ask me, but like, I think that everybody is ready for the offense to take another step. The evolution of the Mike Denbrock offense at Notre Dame is ready to take another step. And like I said, Riley Leonard's going to go down in history as a Notre Dame quarterback, regardless of what happens on Monday. Okay? And if they happen to win the game, like, I mean, he's immortal, right? He's going to be immortal. But it's still time to move on, to me.
Price 29, very big on football holidays. Thoughts on the Super Bowl Monday being a holiday? Will college football ever get that? Indiana might make the day after the Super Bowl Sunday a holiday. Your thoughts? Think college football ever gets the same? What do you think about this?
The state doesn't get to do that, number one. That has to be a national holiday, because businesses are just going to throw one of their fingers up and be like, no, we're not taking the day off. Are there any other state sanctioned holidays?
Well, even if nationally they did it, you're only talking about government employees.
Good point.
There's still like
me,
private businesses. Yeah, that's
the day off.
Yeah, but private businesses,
they're not taking the day off.
Yeah, they're not going to shut down the grocery store because it's the day after the Super Bowl.
There's no way that's ever going to happen. It's just not. So the only way that would work is if they somehow lined up the Super Bowl with like MLK Day or something along those lines, something that's already established. But that's never going to happen for the NFL. And if it's not going to happen for the NFL, it's certainly not going to happen for college. College is already playing their national championship on a Monday because of the NFL. They're not going to give you a Tuesday off as well. Like that's just not reality, unfortunately. That's why you save your sick days or your personal days and you take it off. Okay.
PTO, like, baby.
I'm taking my day off on Tuesday. Personal day. Don't have to say where I'm doing. Personal day.
Yeah, you're taking it off, but how much driving you're doing, I think, is the question.
Well, that remains to be seen, doesn't it?
Price also wants to know if Riley Leonard is on track to graduate. I have no clue.
Last time they asked him that question, he said he had no idea. So there you go. And you can take that for whatever you want it to take it as. So I don't know. He's a true senior.
Just count your blessings that they got him in as a junior.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I mean, he did go to Duke, and we've kind of talked about that in the past, that, like schools of that profile, your Dukes and your Northwesterns, like where Brandon Joseph came from and that kind of stuff, you probably had a better shot of getting in the undergrad transfers, and that's exactly how it worked.
Yeah. So look, Riley Leonard's a smart cat. He's going to graduate at some point. He's I would assume he's on track for a December graduation, but I have no idea. And he didn't share that information when somebody actually asked him about it. His literal answer was, I have no idea because of the way things transferred over and stuff.
And
like
if he doesn't, and that was the same with Brandon Joseph, remember? Like, I don't know if you remember that, but like when we asked him when he was coming in, he didn't even know if he was going to get his degree from Northwestern or if it was going to be from Notre Dame, just because of the way with the credits and all that different kind of stuff.
Yep.
So. I am Tens and wants to know, should I call out sick from my primary job after Notre Dame wins and Uber, or should I just go in with zero sleep after all the IB Nation celebrations?
I need to know what your job is, because that will go a long way. Are you a mattress tester? So then you're good. Are you a heavy machinery operator? I would say then no, I think you need to stay home. So I don't know what your job is, my man. So I've gone into school tired before. But yeah, you want to be careful. You want to be careful. You want to be careful.
I agree. If it's something where you're putting somebody else in a little bit of danger, then, just stay home.
Yeah.
Call off. Don't go in. Better odds, Love or Smith going over 100?
I mean, Ohio State fans would say Smith. I say Love. So, I mean, Smith is a really, really good receiver, but Notre Dame is going to have a plan for him. If he goes off, that's a problem. So I'll say Love.
Yeah, I'm going to say Love as well, because Marvin Harrison Jr. didn't crack 100 yards in either of his games against Notre Dame, and it's the same defensive coordinator, the same secondary coach, and it'll be some different guys out there because there's no BMO in this game. But I think if they can hold the guy who was a top 5 NFL draft pick under 100 yards 2 years in a row, I think they've got a pretty good chance of keeping Smith under. So I'll go with Love as well. Vince, a lot of good questions tonight.
Yeah.
But are you ready for rapid fire?
I am born ready for rapid fire. Let's do this.
Fill in the blank. With the national championship game just days away, the word that best describes Notre Dame football is blank.
On the rise, ascending.
That's 3 words.
Damn it. Ascending.
All right.
Ooh, man, dang it. I just think everything about Notre Dame is ascending. Coaching staff, roster, recruiting, image, all of it. It's all ascending. No matter what happens on Monday, it's all ascending.
My word, singular, is unfazed. I think that they have been unfazed by everything this year, from the loss to Northern Illinois that everyone, wanted to hang around their neck like a scarlet letter, all year long. They were unfazed by that. All they did was go out and win out for the rest of the regular season. And then they get into the playoffs with all this different noise around them. And they've played 3 different teams with 3 different styles of play. And, each one a little bit closer than the next. But all they've done is go out and beaten the SEC champion. And they have beaten the second best team in the Big Ten, and now they're getting ready to play for the national championship. So they've been unfazed through, and obviously all the injuries that they have had to sustain along the way to get to this point, which is really just truly amazing when you sit down and think about it. They've been unfazed by all of it, and they're getting ready to play for a championship.
Yep.
So Riley Leonard was on the Rich Eisen show this week. Eisen, of course, is a Michigan alum, and he had this exchange with Leonard at the end of the interview.
The phrase, "and the enemy of my enemy is my friend." Riley, have you heard that one before?
I have, of course, and I know where this is going.
I have taught my children 2 things. 3 sweet individuals who are upstanding for future community members. You root for Michigan and whoever is playing Ohio State. So, Riley, are you aware of just the fact that I'm even sitting here and liking you and your coach and everything that you're doing? I don't even know what's going on in my skull right now. It's freaking me out. I'm freaking out, Riley. But I'm there for you on Monday night.
I appreciate you, man. I'm very well aware that the entire state of Michigan is going to be wearing navy blue and gold for the first time ever.
I can't even believe I'm saying it. I can't even believe I'm saying it. But, I wouldn't mind if Michigan wasn't the last team to beat Ohio State this year. I wouldn't mind it one bit.
That's also a good point. I remember I saw something that all of Michigan's just rooting for the game to somehow magically get postponed and never played or end up in a tie.
So again, that's Riley Leonard with Rich Eisen, Michigan alum. Do you think that a majority of Michigan fans feel like Eisen feels about this Notre Dame-Ohio State game?
Look, there's no love lost between Michigan and Notre Dame fans, but there's even less love lost between Michigan and Ohio State. And I think it is the lesser of 2 evils. And I do think that there's a lot of Michigan fans out there, probably the vast majority, that are rooting for Notre Dame. And the small number of Michigan fans that I actually converse with, who I call friends, have reached out to me in one form or another saying how much they're rooting for Notre Dame. So
really?
That's a small pocket.
What about those guys who wear green? Like, what about Sparty? What about the Michigan State fans? I wonder where they are on this.
They're worried about next year. They don't care about what's going on.
Well, they've been worried about next year for a long time.
Yeah. Hey, look, I think they could be decent next year. I haven't looked at their schedule, but I think they could be decent. But look, the bottom line is I think there's a lot of Michigan fans rooting for Notre Dame on Monday. I really do think that is the case. They hate Ohio State with a passion that burns brighter than the sun.
That's true. It is very true. And it does feel like the hatred for Ohio State is much greater than the hatred for Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Because they don't play Notre Dame every year,
correct.
Obviously. I think that's got to have
There's no deep-seated history. I mean, there's a history, but
it's
not
deep-seated.
But it's not like the history between Ohio State
not
and
as
Michigan.
Recent. Yeah.
Like, it's just not.
Yeah, exactly. If we had more Michigan people in here, we could actually take a poll, but fortunately we don't, so we don't have to worry.
Fortunately is the right word there.
So what about you? Like if it was Michigan playing Ohio State, would you have a rooting interest? Like would you be rooting for Ohio State?
Yes. Actively.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
With fervor. Yeah. I have a hatred for me. I'm not even happy overall. Like,
what is your why do you hate? Don't take this the wrong way. Neither one of us is a Notre Dame alum, so why do you hate Michigan as much as you do? Because it obviously is connected to Notre Dame.
It's the people. 100%. It's the people that I'm around more often than not. There's not a lot of Ohio State fans that live around here that I interact with on a regular basis.
Are the Michigan people as obnoxious as the Indiana people were before the Indiana game?
Listen, the Indiana people rose up the ranks pretty quickly. Now, I don't know if that's sustainable for them. You know what I mean? Like, because I can't stand Indiana basketball. Yeah. Like with about the same amount of passion as I can't stand Michigan.
Me too.
So
all it took was their Final Four run in 2002. I'd been here for like a year,
that's right.
And to see how quickly all those people got so obnoxious, and it's like, wow, really?
It was absolutely a situation of you've clearly never been here before and you don't know how to react. Like that's what it felt like with IU fans. So yeah, yes, they rose up the rank. They didn't hit Michigan yet because I don't think it's sustainable. Michigan will always be there. IU is probably going to come back to reality a little bit next year, and so they probably won't be quite as loud. I think they're going to be solid over the next few years, but I don't know that they're going to be, 11-1 Indiana. Like I don't see that happening, but we'll see. We'll see.
My Michigan Ohio State stance has historically been which one is going to screw up the other one's season. And that's who I root for. Fair. And like if they're both good and they're both playing in the national championship game, I mean, one of them's going to be the national champion. So I have no one to root for.
Yeah.
In that instance. So no, I would not have a rooting interest if Michigan and Ohio State were playing for the national championship.
I rooted for Michigan in the Michigan-Ohio State game this year and see.
Well, I did in that, but again, like
right, it didn't turn out like that.
Screw up the other team's season, but it didn't long run. Yeah, it didn't do anything.
It just backfired.
May have made them even better.
I know
the way it turned out.
I know. So I listen. My hatred for Michigan is so hot that as ecstatic as I am about where my kid is going to go to school, it's still in the state of Michigan, and that bothers me a little bit. Like I wish I could just pick it up and move it to Indiana.
Yeah, Jesse did, and Jesse's school colors were the same. Like
that's true.
His head coach was a Michigan man.
And there it is.
They wore maize and blue.
Yeah.
So, yep. Didn't have the helmets, but
that those helmets are awful.
Honestly, I've always liked the helmet.
I know you have. Like the helmets. The helmets are right on par for me with the candy stripe pants for basketball for IU.
Right.
Like those two, because they're unmistakable for that school. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so it's just brings up like boiling blood energy for me.
Yep. Okay, so speaking of people we love to hate, Brian Kelly's season ended last month. He was with the other coaches who are not coaching in the national championship game in Charlotte this week for the National Coaches Association convention. And he did an interview with CBS Sports and was asked if he is pulling for Notre Dame to win the championship next week. Here is Brian Kelly's response. I wish we had audio, but I'll just have to read you.
Okay.
Quote, I'm happy for all those guys. I pull for them. A lot of guys that were there on both sides of the ball I recruited. Obviously, I want to see those guys win it all, and I think they're in a great position. Totally excited for those guys. End quote. Brian Kelly. Do you buy or sell BK's sincerity, Vince?
Oh my God, it's a huge sell. Are you kidding me? Anything with BK and sincerity in it, I'm going to sell no matter what the topic is.
That's exactly right. The opposite of sincere. There's a photo of the purple-faced man.
Right. Like that is, I would not, that is not sincere in any way, shape, or form. And you want to talk about revisionist history with that comment. Like, are you serious right now? You should have just said no comment and it would have been better.
That's like the key to this whole thing. Like,
man,
I'm surprised that he keeps answering questions about Notre Dame, quite honestly, but he keeps answering questions about Notre Dame.
My God.
There is no way that he is sitting in Baton Rouge and he is pulling for Notre Dame because he knows, like Brian Kelly sees the comments, he reads the media, he hears it, he knows what's going on. He knows that everyone's talking about Marcus Freeman's actually made Notre Dame likable again. And the last guy wasn't very likable. I mean, he knows, he's never had, I think he's never had the introspection to realize, he's not self-aware enough to realize how despised he is by so many people. That's part of his problem.
His reality is his reality. You know what I mean? He's one of those people. Like, I'm sure in his mind, he absolutely believes what he says. It's part of being a narcissist, which I totally think that he is. And so I think that he believes exactly what he said, even though it's not even close to backing up what he said before about you can only win national championships in the SEC. Yeah, I mean, we're
about to get to that, but let me ask you this, because Salty had this in and I was saving it.
Okay.
Would the Irish have reached the national championship game this year with Brian Kelly as head coach?
No, because they would have lost the Georgia game. They would have won the IU game. Well, first of all, let's just say they were 11-1. The regular season went exactly the way that it did, and they got to the playoff with this seeding and all that. Okay, so I know that's a lot because I don't think that would have happened either. But let's just say that. Okay, I think he beats IU because he has better players, right? And I also want to say he has this roster, which I don't think he would have had if he was the head coach.
No, the roster would look completely
different. What I mean? Yeah,
because you're assuming that he has this roster,
right?
But the roster would look completely different.
So let's just say this roster was gifted to Brian Kelly for the playoffs. Let's put it that way. I think he beats IU because they have a better roster. Yeah, right. I think he loses to Georgia, and then the season's over.
Me too.
At that point, so yeah,
because he doesn't have the same mindset. Like, he was always fully content to try to keep it as close as possible. But like in the big moments, Brian Kelly doesn't have the same mindset that Marcus Freeman has about actually playing the game to win, going for it, and just the confidence that the players, have because of Marcus Freeman as well. I don't think that the mindset is the same. Like, physically, the bodies might be the same,
right?
But I don't think that I just the overall mentality and the aura of the team is completely different if it's Brian Kelly running things.
100%.
So, after Kelly got to LSU, he did several interviews with national outlets, of course, and he made the comment that he wanted to be in an environment where he had the chance to win a national championship. Well, so now in this interview with CBS Sports, he says that fans and media have misinterpreted those comments. Quote, "They're selling it the way they want to sell it. Why do you leave Notre Dame? You leave Notre Dame because you're taking another challenge. I took Notre Dame to championships. It's just the way you want to twist it. You only leave Notre Dame to go win a championship. I wasn't leaving Notre Dame because I couldn't win a championship. You can win championships at Notre Dame, but I chose another path because I wanted a different challenge."
Couldn't help yourself.
No. Your reaction to that, Vince?
You want to talk about, again, your own reality, right? And just talking back everything that he said when he was walking out the door at Notre Dame. Everything that he said punctuated the fact that you can't win a championship at Notre Dame. Every single thing. The chef, the resources, the recruiting, all of those different things. Everything he said was a backhanded shot at Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Every single thing.
All you got to do is go out and see all these interviews that he started doing after he got down there. And it was just filled with that kind of stuff.
Yes. And as this Ohio State fan aptly says, and I appreciate this hummus hero, he says, yeah, Kelly's latest statements on being at a place to win that championship is some next level nonsense. That's Brian Kelly in a nutshell. It's next level, man. Like, when you think you've heard it all, he's like, no, I got more. I got more. Don't worry. So, yeah, just hilarious.
He needs a mute button for himself. He just doesn't know when to shut up. He's like Ron Burgundy, like anything you put on the teleprompter, Ron Burgundy's going to read. Like Brian Kelly will answer any question you give him because he thinks, again, like in his reality, he thinks he's got the perfect answer for every question. And that like, I'm going to answer it this way, but he's always got the wrong response, like play the hits from, I want to execute my players like go back to Deshaun Watson. Remember the questions that he got about like, should Deshaun Watson have stayed in college for another year? It's like that was a case where Brian Kelly, just should have went zip. I'm not going to answer that question. 3 years down the road now, like just because somebody asks you a question about Notre Dame at this point doesn't mean you have to answer it. And I get it. Notre Dame is obviously playing in the national championship game, so there's a big spotlight, but Brian Kelly just needs to stay away from saying anything about Notre Dame anymore. Yes. It does not do him any good. No. All it does is make him look like a bigger jerk every time he says anything, even though he thinks that he's spinning it in the way that he wants to spin it.
Yeah, 100%. I don't even know why he brings it up. I would be like, no, just change the subject, guys. Yeah. Like, I'm not going to give you the soundbite that you're looking for. And yet he does. I don't understand why he just keeps doing it. Yes, USMA 87, he's like, BK's a politician. Like, there's no question that he won't answer and try to spin it in whatever way that he wants to spin it. I get it. But, dude, you're doing yourself no good. And everybody's saying that, he's going to be rooting against. Of course he's rooting against Notre Dame.
He's absolutely rooting against.
Are you kidding me? If I was in his shoes and I said all the stupid stuff that he said, I'd be rooting against Notre Dame too. Because Notre Dame winning doesn't do him any good.
Nope.
At all.
All it does is another knock on his legacy. I mean, the guy is the winningest coach in Notre Dame history. He's never going to get a statue over there at Notre Dame, even though he probably is pretty sure that he will. You know what I mean? Like, it's never going to happen. It'll never happen because he did not win games that mattered.
Correct.
Enough. That's what it comes down to.
And, he left Notre Dame the way he left Cincinnati, with everybody pissed off in his wake.
Yeah.
Like, that's not going to get you any statues either. You know what I mean? Regardless of the accomplishments. And, we give Brian Kelly credit for, getting the team to where he got them, the program to where he got it. But, man, you can't leave a fan base like that or an institution like that the way he left it and expect them to bring him back with open arms. Like, that's just never going to happen.
He just needs to, like, type out on a note card and stick it in his wallet. And then anytime somebody asks him about Notre Dame, just pull it out and read it. I loved my time at Notre Dame, but I'm the head coach at LSU now. I'll only answer LSU questions. It's
super simple.
Yeah.
Super simple. And we wouldn't be talking about it right now.
Right.
If he said that, he's just an idiot.
So Brady Quinn sees things a bit differently.
Yeah, that he does.
Than Brian Kelly sees things. The former Notre Dame quarterback is, of course, Notre Dame's most prominent current media member. He works for Fox, and he's got his own radio show with LeVar Arrington, 2 Pros and a Cup of Joe. And so the day after the Irish beat Penn State to move on from the national championship, Quinn had some interesting things to say about kind of how this push started 3 years ago. And I honestly, like, again, this came out last week and I was kind of sitting on this. I've had this, I'd listened to it, and I was like, do I really want to get into Brian Kelly stuff, the week, leading up to the national championship game? And then Brian Kelly gave his interview with CBS Sports and again, put himself out there. So I'm like, perfect timing, because BK is disputing, again, like this whole, I went to LSU to be in an environment where I can win championships. So here's what Brady Quinn had to say about hearing those comments that Brian Kelly made when he went to LSU for the first time and what it led to. Now, this is a little bit longer than a typical cut we would play, but it's Brady Quinn with some pretty important stuff.
I'm going to sit back and enjoy it.
All right, here you go.
It's been a long time in the making, in the sense of, when you go back to how Notre Dame ultimately got here, this was all sparked by the decision of Brian Kelly to choose to go to LSU. Brian Kelly, the head coach at LSU, who back when he left Notre Dame, I think he said sometime in January that He wanted an environment where they had the resources to win a national championship. That was his words. And just to be fully honest and transparent, that ticked me off, man. Literally, January 19th in 2022, and after he said all these words, I called my attorney the next day and I said, you're going to file for a collective. This is what we're going to do. This is how you're going to put it together. I formed a board, started a fundraise, proved the concept. After that, started to bring on more people and grow and expand. And it created a collective that had the resources necessary to support this. So this is back in, all triggered because of Brian Kelly. And there are so many people who stepped up from Notre Dame Nation to help put together the resources necessary to support Marcus Freeman, to support the players, to be able to step up because they were ticked off. I mean, I'm just one of many. Like when I look at what our collective was able to start and how we were able to help out our football team, it was in large part a call to action because of Brian Kelly. And if you look at where the university is at now and the fact that they're building onto their sports performance center, they've got millions that they've been able to raise through NIL and support their program. And many players, which the quarterback, Leonard, probably off the top amongst everyone else, is there in a big reason because of NIL. All those things to me, like I take great pride in. And I know there's a lot of people who took great pride in watching this team, watching Marcus be able to succeed. And they took that as a sign of disrespect from Brian Kelly when he left. So now that Notre Dame's there, they're playing for a national championship. And I know there's a lot of people who are like, hey, the mission's not done. This is no different than Brian Kelly. BS. This is very different than when Brian Kelly had this football team. The way Marcus has built this thing up, the way Notre Dame has built up over his tenure so far, it feels different because it is different. This is nothing comparable to what Brian Kelly was like when he was the head coach there. They had some great teams. The 2012 team that went to a national championship with Manti Te'o. You look at some of the teams with Ian Book, guys who were able to get to the playoff. The way this team is playing, the way it's built, the resources that they have, it's on a different level now.
Brady Quinn, true Notre Dame man. Vince, what do you think about that blowtorch that Brady Quinn just took to Brian Kelly?
It's the first time I've heard that cut, and I was like the little hairs on your arms starting to stand up a little bit. Like that's a pregame speech for me. Like what he was just saying was like a pregame speech for me, because the fact that with Brian Kelly leaving, Brady Quinn was like, okay, now it's time to raise money for Notre Dame.
Now you ticked me off. We're gonna get down and dirty now.
Oh my gosh. Like Brady Quinn is cementing his legacy at Notre Dame, off the field as well as on the field, right? Because he's in charge of all of this, NIL stuff and everything. Like that is friggin' amazing. I didn't know all of that, obvious. I knew he was in charge of the collective, and I knew all of that.
I didn't realize that it stemmed specifically from that.
Oh my gosh. But doesn't that tell you, number one, it tells you how BK treated the alumni, the football alumni at Notre Dame, because not only did it tick off Brady Quinn and he started this thing, but I guarantee you most of his calls for that collective were former players, and they're all like, yes, let's do this. And you didn't see anybody going out on a limb for BK when he was here to do all of that.
Right.
But they did when he left. Freaking glorious.
That's exactly. Between the money that they raised for that, for fund,
right.
FUN, Friends of the University of Notre Dame. That's the collective that Brady Quinn is talking about that was so big and has helped them out so much. And by the way, I posted, you can see the Irish Breakdown Notre Dame football post in the chat. That is the link on YouTube to the full, it wasn't an interview. It was his
show.
It was his show. Two pros and a cup of Joe. It's Brady Quinn and LeVar Arrington which is kind of ironic considering, Arrington, of course, played for Penn State. So you had a Notre Dame guy and a Penn State guy hosting a national radio show together. But Two Pros and a Cup of Joe is his radio show. So like you can go back in their archives and, like if you didn't get that link, or you can just Google that. If you Google Brady Quinn, Brian Kelly, it might just come up, or just go to YouTube and search that. It'll probably
that speech needs to get more play on social media. I don't know if I'm just not seeing it or what, but that speech needs to get some more play because that is glorious.
So Andy Milton fan, the other side of it, he says, don't you kind of feel like Brady is saying it since he created the collective, the team is now successful? I don't think that he's trying to take credit for it. I think that what he's saying is like, look, there's no doubt that this collective, in terms of, NIL and what Notre Dame has been able to do with NIL over the last 3 years, since they started it, there's no doubt that this collective has helped out Notre Dame immensely in their ability to be legitimate players in the NIL space and get these transfer guys especially to come here and be able to retain your, like Howard Cross and Riley Mills as examples. Like, they could have entered the NFL draft last year and probably been on NFL rosters this year. They wouldn't necessarily have been like, first, second, third round picks, most likely, but they would have had a really good chance to be on NFL rosters if they had declared for the draft last year. But they stayed around, and NIL is a big part of being able to retain those guys. So, I get what you're saying. Like, like Andy Milton fan is saying, is Brady Quinn basically, is he saying, that he's taking credit for the success?
He's allowed to take a little bit of credit for it.
To an extent he is, but he's also saying that what motivated this, what really kicked him into gear to get this started, was Brian Kelly throwing shade at Notre Dame on the way out the door and saying, we can't be competitive. I couldn't be competitive at Notre Dame. I wasn't getting the resources that I needed at Notre Dame. I can get them here at LSU. And Brady Quinn said, well, you want to see resources? We're going to get some resources. Right. And that's not going to be an issue at Notre Dame.
Well, and
so whether he's claiming success or
that's okay,
whether
though.
He's, claiming credit for it or not, doesn't matter at this point, because there's no doubt that this has played a huge part in what Notre Dame's been able to do with NIL.
So Garrick 74 says, I'm not a Brian Kelly fan, but that makes it sound a little bit like he was right that he didn't have the support he needed. Do you want to know why he didn't have the support he needed? Because nobody liked him.
It's because of him. It's because you talk about night and day personalities.
Correct.
Why he couldn't get more support. Like, stop making excuses and just go out and do it.
Right.
It's interesting because Pete Sampson in The Athletic had a Q&A this week with Greg McElroy, of course, from ESPN, who's been doing, the ESPN. He's been the game analyst for all three of Notre Dame's college football playoff games. And they talked about Marcus Freeman in there. And one of the things, because obviously when they do these pre-production in the production meetings before the games, the analyst, the play-by-play guy, they sit down with the head coach and go through and talk about different things about their team and, ask them questions every week. And what McElroy said is not once in any of these production, and they had him during the regular season as well, not at any point during any of those production meetings has Marcus Freeman said, oh man, I sure wish we had this guy, like insert your guy who was lost to the season for injury, Jordan Botello, Boubacar Traore, whoever it happens to be. Never once did Marcus Freeman make excuses for like any of those injuries hindering the path that they have had to get to where they are, because this is all before they got to the national championship game, not knowing the result of any of the college football playoff games they had. And never once did he make excuses like, oh, we're so banged up, we've got all these injuries, I don't know, how are we going to do, any of this kind of stuff. Freeman never made excuses for that.
Yeah.
And, Brian Kelly, the king of throwing his players under the bus and deflecting any blame from himself. but Marcus Freeman, again, the complete opposite of that. And so like any of these, like you're telling me that the donors don't notice that, the alumni don't notice that. How about the open arms for the players, like the past players that Marcus Freeman has had? Again, night and day, complete opposite of anything that Brian Kelly did in his 12 years at Notre Dame.
And that's why all these players are donating to fund. And it's not just players, but I mean, you see more players coming. Like, Sean, you and I are at every home game. I have not seen this many players in the last 3 years coming back to games because they recognize them every time that they're there, at least the big time players. But there's always other players there as well who aren't getting the recognition at the game, right? Because there's only so much time. But I can't remember during a BK season this many players coming back to games. You know what I mean? Like that just it wasn't the culture that BK had. It just wasn't. And it is with Brian Kelly. He's the one that's doing Zooms in the offseason with all the former players, whoever wants to be a part of it, to give them an update on the program and to do all of these different things. Like BK never wouldn't take the time of day to do that. You know what I mean? And Freeman he's making those guys a part of the program.
That's exactly right. Gordy, not BK constantly took the easy way out in recruiting and coaching. Not surprised he failed to effectively fundraise. And I mean, again, like when you look at the many list of differences between, like look at the relationships, and I know it's look at the culture that Marcus Freeman has in this program. And, and again, like the no excuses thing, like you think that doesn't go a long way. The fact that he's not standing up there at the podium, throwing players under the bus ever once, not even a hint of it in 3 years. You think that doesn't go a long way in the locker room and with parents and with, of recruits and everything else. Everybody notices that kind of stuff. And that's why Market like Brian Kelly would have probably cut off his arm to get a chance to go coach in the NFL. Marcus Freeman is the guy who NFL teams actually covet.
And he's like, yeah, I'm good.
Yeah.
I love it.
Because again, like I think a lot of people kind of, like you can say culture and, people kind of, might roll their eyes or, think it's overrated or whatever else. But I don't think that Notre Dame is sitting here getting ready to play for a national championship if the culture wasn't what it is in that locker room. That's a 180, I think, from what it used to be. Again, I've tried to avoid, and somebody brought it up yesterday, like BK stuff this week. But if he's going to go out there and go out of his way, it's like, you leave us no choice. And then it was just gold to have that Brady Quinn stuff ready to go. So bravo, Brady Quinn. The College Football Coaches Association is exploring a solution to curtail players faking injuries during games. One possibility they're looking at is requiring any injured player to miss the rest of the drive in which he gets hurt. A coach could use a timeout in that drive to get the player back in the game. An additional fine for the head coach is also a possibility that would come with this. So do you buy or sell this potential change, Vince?
I mean, I like the fact that they're looking into it to try to curtail it, because the fake injury stuff is very, very annoying. There's no doubt about it. The only problem I have is how are you going to definitively execute this particular rule? Like, how do you know if a player is actually injured or not, if he cramps up or, whatever? You know what I mean?
Like a cramp is a perfect example.
Right.
Like, because that's something, you get a cramp, you've got to leave, go to the sideline for maybe 3 or 4 plays or something like that. But then it's like they rub it out or whatever, and you can get back in.
Right.
How are you going to definitively be able to determine if someone's actually faking? Right. That's what I want.
That's my biggest issue with this whole thing, because at some point they are going to fine or punish a team when they had a legitimate injury. It just at a very inopportune time. So it looked like, you know what I mean? Like that's the only thing that I worry
James'
about
idea.
with this.
Get a note from your doctor.
Epstein's mother. She's
right.
probably not busy. She can start writing notes for people.
And that's because I was thinking about it. Like if a player is legitimately injured, he's going to miss the rest of the series anyway,
Fair.
But again, like there are things that happen, whether it's a cramp, even twisting your ankle, or just, a stinger, like there's a lot of little things that might knock you out for a play or two. You just get the wind knocked out of you.
Right.
There's a lot of things. So how are you going to determine what's real and what's not? That's what I just don't know how you can create any kind of rule. And like finding the head coaches for this really seems a bit.
I don't like that at all. I don't like that at all. And I do think some teams take advantage of the rule and go down unnecessarily. I do think that for sure. But the teams that are where actually guys get hurt, like they're going to get punished for something that they didn't do. And that's going to bother me. And it's going to happen in a key moment that's going to decide a game. And that's going to be a problem.
Milton fan says charge an actual timeout for injuries. See, I don't know if I like that either, because then, again, it's like guys legitimately get hurt. So now you've got to lose a timeout because a guy got hurt. Like,
yeah, that doesn't seem fair.
Again, you can't, like, how do you determine? I don't know how you determine what's real and what's not.
Right, exactly. That's the problem for me.
Now, I mean, there are some obvious ones where the guy's walking around and some guy runs in for the sideline and goes, "Hey, drop, get down," pretend, like that kind of stuff.
Right.
But yes, I don't like it. I wish that there was some way, but I just don't feel like this is the way to go. Like maybe you've got to sit out for the rest of the series. Okay. But then you're also punishing people who are legitimately hurt, if it's something that could have got them back in 2 or 3 plays.
That's tough.
So
that's tough for me.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is going to do it for today. A lot of great questions in the chat on Mailbag Day as we get closer and closer. Doesn't it seem like it seemed like last week, to me, I felt like flew by. This week is completely dragging.
Because there's nothing this week.
That's right.
We've got no practice availability. I don't think we have any media really availability to my knowledge.
They were doing players this afternoon, players tonight.
Okay. That's right.
Basically, Marcus Freeman's press conference, his Zoom on Sunday, was the only press conference that he did, before he gets down there. It's going to be Saturday and Sunday when all the media happens down there in Atlanta this week.
Right. So yeah, this week is just crawling. I mean, Notre Dame's not even leaving for the game until Friday. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they've got all week here, and then they'll be basically down there for the weekend, and then they come back on Monday night. So yeah, it's just been a weird week, and it does. Having the game on Thursday of last week made things very quick because, people traveling home after the day delay and everything else. And then it's like, oh my God, we've got 3 days and then it's going to be game time again. Like that's what it felt like. And now you've got a whole week. So it's kind of wild.
Absolutely. Hit the like button before you leave, subscribe, rate, and review. And we will talk to you very soon. Just like IB is bringing you shows.
Oh,
I think there's a show every day leading up to the game.
Yep,
basically.
there will be. Yep.
So,
and Brian in the chat, go ahead and message me on Twitter, buddy. If you're being real with me.
About what?
Potential ticket.
Oh, okay. I didn't see that. All right, hit the like button. We'll talk to you later. IB Nation Sports Talk.